this video, I will demonstrate how to use the Genesys 20 Spectrophotometer in biology lab. The spectrophotometer will be used to measure the absorbance of a variety of samples in the lab. The Genesys 20 Spectrophotometer has three main parts. The display shows the wavelength that has been set and the absorbance value. The interface is the panel that contains the controls to set the wavelength, blank the machine, and set the type of reading. In our case, this is absorbance. The last part is the sample chamber where sample cuvettes are placed. Special sample cuvettes are needed to take absorbance readings. These are the two types of sample cuvettes that you may use in the lab. Some cuvettes are clear on all sides, as in this case. Some cuvettes have ridges or frosting on two sides, while the other two sides are clear. It is important to handle the cuvettes carefully to avoid leaving fingerprints and oils from your skin on the surfaces. When working with completely clear cuvettes, only handle the cuvette at the top. When using frosted or ridged cuvettes, make sure you only handle the frosted or ridged sides and avoid the clear side. When you enter the lab, the spectrophotometer will already be on, warmed up, and ready for use. The display should already be in absorbance mode A, as indicated on the display. If it is not, simply press the ATC button until you see the A at the end of the display. In this class, we will only be measuring absorbance, so the display should always be set to absorbance mode. Now you are ready to set the wavelength and blank the machine. As you can see here, the machine is currently set at 450 nanometers. To set the wavelength, use the two buttons labeled NM arrow up or NM arrow down. Make sure you use these buttons and not the arrows near the display area. In this demonstration, I will be setting the wavelength to 430 nanometers by pressing the NM arrow down button. When making changes in wavelength that are far apart, it is better to press and hold the button rather than pressing and releasing the button 1 nanometer at a time. Now that the wavelength has been set to 430 nanometers, the machine must be blanked before the absorbance of a sample can be read. For your experiments, you will be provided with two cuvettes. One will contain the blank or sample solvent, and the other will be used for your sample. Pick up the cuvette, touching only the top or the ridged sides to avoid fingerprints. It is important to gently wipe the clear parts of the cuvette with a Kim wipe to remove any fingerprints, but not so hard that you scratch the cuvette. Fingerprints and scratches can affect the passage of the light beam through the sample and therefore affect your absorbance reading. Once the blank cuvette has been cleaned, open the lid of the spectrophotometer and insert the blank firmly and carefully in the sample chamber. It is important to keep the clear side of the cuvette facing you to allow the light beam to pass through the cuvette. If you look closely, you will see an arrow beside the slot for the cuvette that shows the pathway of light. Make sure the clear sides of the cuvette are positioned in line with the arrow. Once the cuvette has been fully inserted, close the lid of the chamber. Press the 0 ABS 100% T button to blank the sample. When the machine is done setting the blank, the window will display the wavelength that has been set and 0.000A, or zero absorbance. By setting the blank, we have canceled out all the absorbance due to the solvent used in the experiment. To read the absorbance of a sample, open the lid to the chamber and remove the blank cuvette. Select the sample cuvette and wipe it clean with a Kim wipe. Insert the cuvette, once again making sure the cuvette is positioned with the clear side facing you. Close the lid to the chamber and wait for the reading to stabilize. No adjustments to the machine are necessary. In our case, the absorbance reading is 0.680. Absorbance does not have units. Anytime you change the wavelength, you must re-blank the machine following the steps described to set the wavelength and blank the machine. Begin by removing your sample. Set the wavelength using the NM arrow up or NM arrow down. Using the blank sample, blank the machine to set the absorbance to 0 for the new wavelength. Remove the blank. Insert your sample and record your absorbance reading. Here are some important reminders. Always handle the cuvette carefully to avoid fingerprints by holding either from the top of the cuvette or on the frosted sides. Always wipe the cuvette with a Kim wipe to remove fingerprints, oils, or sample droplets. Always insert the cuvette with the clear side facing you. Always blank the instrument before taking an absorbance reading. Thank you for joining me in this video showing how to use a spectrophotometer in biology lab. Good luck with your experiment.